right, good morning, everybody. Just checking in first, make sure you can hear me okay. Just give me a thumbs up. Let me know the sound's all right, please. Had some difficulties Tuesday night, but I think I fixed them, so hopefully we'll be all right now. All right, thanks, Amy. Appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and get started. We can all join palms to begin. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. All right, you can put the palms down. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. Thanks for being here. I always like to get started just with a question, just to give a chance for others to join, and also an opportunity for you to communicate a little bit, share some thoughts. So I think my question for this morning is relatively simple, but the question of dealing with difficult people that you would consider difficult people, challenges, those that trigger you in your life. How are you at dealing with them? Go ahead and type that in here. How are you at dealing with people you consider difficult? Consider difficult, or those that trigger you. The reason I changed that a little bit, how are you dealing with people who you consider difficult or those that trigger you, is that, and I did it myself, that we often may quickly default to calling someone a difficult person. But the reality is they're just who they are. And then we give them some sort of label or define them as being a certain way, when in reality they're just being who and how they are. And so that's always the challenge for us, is to recognize that we are difficult people to handle for others sometimes. We can be incredibly challenging for others to deal with, but we don't necessarily see it that way. So when you are triggered, how easy is it for you to respond with kindness or compassion or forgiveness, whatever it might be? And really, can we move away from this label of calling someone a difficult person and recognize that they are, like I said earlier, they're just being who and how they are. So these are good things, I think, with practice to explore. Very often when we deal with our own suffering, our own anger, anxiety, depression, whatever it might be, there are people and places and things that trigger it. And very often it's people. So it's a good thing to explore. to kind of become aware of throughout your day. So if you are new, I was kind of rambling a bit there, but if you are new to joining us, welcome. There's a chat box there on your screen. I see some of you have already chimed in a little bit. I appreciate it. So feel free to just share your thoughts. Again, how are you at dealing with people you consider difficult or those that trigger you? So I'll read some of the responses here. Adam, normally not the greatest, but I'm learning that people have experiences that have shaped their behavior and actions. Like you're saying, they are who they are. It's not anything I've done to them. Yeah, exactly. And talk about that a lot, that they've had experiences that shape who and how they are, just like we've had experiences that shape who and how we are. So they're all dealing with the same things. Well, different things, but similar situations in that we've all had experiences that have shaped us. Samir, 2 boys under 5, work in progress. Sadly phased out others to concentrate on them because I'm not easily triggered. Yeah, I mean, that's, there's your attention. Your focus is the 2 kids, and those are the ones that will really shine a light very brightly on how you are and dealing with them in certain situations. So great practice, of course. Benton, I think that's one of the main reasons why I am here and practice as much as I can. Yeah, definitely. I used to kind of joke or have this expression that, if everybody would just do exactly what we want them to do all the time, life would be so much simpler. But we know that's not the case. It's never going to be the case. So it is, as you say, Benton, just a continuous practice to recognize how to respond to these people in a different manner. Samir, because I kind of figured that. All right, so-called difficult person are just some kind of map for my own conditioned reactions. Yeah, definitely. And that's really what I'm speaking about, is that they really are, as you say, a map or shining a light on our own conditioned reactions, behaviors, responses. Lisa, I try not to be angry or frustrated because it is not beneficial to me and it will not change them. Yeah, that's a good point as well, is that when we are around the people that trigger us or we have challenges with, we often want to change them to meet and be exactly how we want them to be. And that's probably not going to work. So the sooner we can move beyond that and just work on our reaction to them, it makes it a lot easier. Most important thing for me is just to not let anything stupid out of my mouth. Yeah, the silence is important also when it comes to right speech. I talk about that a lot. Is it honest? Is it necessary? Is it true? Are the words we say, are they harmful to others? Being aware of this is really critical. And often, as they say, silence is golden. So very often that's a great response. Jim, lesson in progress. I try to focus on what it is about me that got triggered and why. Yeah, that's really, that's the approach, is to understand what is it about this other person, or what is it about what they're doing that is triggering me and why. Very important things to explore when we get to know the nature of ourselves. All right, one more here. Jana, I'm practicing trying to take a moment, breathe, and recognize it's my response, not them. Yeah, that's, again, very similar to something that was said earlier, is that it's not about them, it's about us. If we can really draw a space between us and them and recognize that they have their own challenges and we have our own challenges, and very often their challenges have nothing to do with us. But if we're not careful, they can trigger us quite deeply. So, see, Janet, is it okay to avoid people we don't like racist people? No, it's a good question, and I think I'll touch on this briefly. Very often it's it's the wisest thing for us to do to stay away from others if we can't control our reactions and our behaviors. So if their actions really trigger us in a way that bring about a lot of anger and hatred and rage in ourselves, then it's probably wise to distance ourselves from them. Um, the flip side, just as a kind of a something to throw out there a little bit, is that for me, practice is working towards not needing to avoid anyone. Again, I understand that we might not be there yet, but if there are people who do things that trigger us and we avoid them, we're often losing opportunities to potentially engage in them in beneficial manners. So, if we look at any social justice issue, it's very easy to just kind of avoid confrontation around it. But if we can engage it with some wisdom and compassion, then we have an opportunity to potentially create dialogue and conversation that maybe will bring about change. As I alluded to earlier, it doesn't mean you're going to change them specifically. But yes, I think if necessary, avoid situations that will cause us tremendous conflict. So, all right, a couple more here. Carla, trying to remember that I may be the difficult person in their life. Definitely. And I often will joke about that and say, it's a Saturday morning and there's 70 of us at a temple. And I say, you're all here because somebody else is driving you crazy. And then I joke and say that someone else is somewhere else sitting because you're driving them crazy. So yes, very often we are that person. All right, and Marisa, last one here. I practice, reminded myself in the triggered moment that I can only control my reaction, not them. Yeah, definitely. A lot of this has to do with, which I know you're also good at, abandoning and trying to let go of this idea that we want to control someone or something. So all we have in each moment is the ability to control our reaction. That's what we can control. We can't control them. So, all right. Yes. And Benton just echoed the same. We can't really change someone else. We can only change our own views. Okay. So thank you all for sharing. With that, we'll go ahead and we'll start the meditation practice. Before we sit, especially for those who may be joining us for the first time, a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is it working? Is it not working? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside, wherever you are. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. So posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, help slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, you'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Where's your mind? Return to breath. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with our own mind and our own mind's reaction to the world around us. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in and where we think we're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen and you react. More things happen, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Now, for most of us, the way we respond to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else that's happening throughout our days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way we feel now is closer to how we feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else. When we look at the question I brought up at the start of today, which was, how are we at dealing with people we consider difficult? This is one of the many reasons the meditation practice is so important. If you can have this level of clarity, this level of stillness, this level of quiet, just have things slowed down, then when we engage with people, regardless of who they are or what they do or what they think or what they say, we can engage with them in a manner that's decent. And I want to be clear to not confuse that with necessarily meaning we have to agree with everybody else or like what they say or support their views or ideas. But with this mind, we can engage. And with a clear, level head, we can attempt to have dialogue and a constructive form of communication, which when we're filled with anger and hatred and rage, that's incredibly difficult to do. So with that, I'll pause for a moment. For those who are new or joining for the first time, welcome. I always like to turn it over to questions. I much prefer responding to meditation or questions around Buddhism that might be on your mind, as opposed to just rambling on my own. So if you are new, again, welcome. Somewhere on your screen there, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to type in any questions you may have. And we'll use the next roughly 20 minutes or so, the rest of our time today, to respond, for me to respond to your thoughts, your questions. So. And I'll share another thought as questions are coming in that, often people ask about the meditation practice as if it's something that you're supposed to get better at, as if there's this idea of gaining or, being better at sitting still or better at quieting the mind or better at doing nothing. None of that is really the purpose of meditation. For me, the purpose of meditation is to prepare us to engage with people in the world. So for me, I don't look at, is my meditation practice getting better? I think, am I engaging with people in a gentler, kinder way? And if I am, then that's usually a reflection of the fact that I am more frequently allowing my mind to settle and be calm. But if you think of a pot of water on a stove and you have it at full boil, if you take it off the stove for 5 seconds and put it back on, it's going to boil immediately. If you take the pot off the stove for 10 minutes and then put it back on, it takes longer to boil. So for me, meditation practice is like turning the stove off for a while. It doesn't take so long to trigger us. Or it takes longer to trigger us, I should say. It's not so quick to trigger. All right, questions. Samir, is it a stronger response to stay silent or mention that someone's words are not right speech or unkind? This is really, I don't think that there's a blanket answer to that question. If someone's words are unkind to us, often it helps to express that, and often it does not. You use very specifically the words right speech. my suggestion always is to not throw around Buddhist terms at people. So, if you're talking to someone who knows nothing about Buddhism, has never looked at it at all, and you're all wrapped up in your Buddhist practice, and they say things that are harmful to you, and you respond with, that's not right speech. This is what I learned in, my Buddhist 101 class. That's probably not going to go over so well. So I think that in each situation, you're going to have to use some sort of wisdom to determine, is it wise for me to stay silent, or is it wise for me to express my thoughts? And for me, I would really default back to Buddhist teachings on, are my words going to be gentle? Are my words going to be kind? Are my words going to be honest? Are my words going to bring harm? And usually we know in this situation if what we're going to say is going to trigger somebody else or not. So again, there's no one way or the other to say it's always going to be the right response. Very often in arguments or dialogue, we have to be very careful that we don't come off in kind of this arrogant way. And so silence also at times may be the best option, but it really just depends on, I think, your intention. Let's see here. I'm wondering, when we think of someone as difficult, that it is really a reflection of who we are. Yeah, I mean, that's a very common thing you'll hear, and a common thing I hear a lot is that when we see someone as difficult, we're recognizing the things that are difficult within us. And I've always kind of wrestled with that personally, because on many levels I agree with that we see things in others that we disagree with or we don't like, and they trigger us. And I would agree that, yes, that is bringing up things about us. But for me, I don't find that always to be the case. So again, I think it's a very unique situation that we just have to honestly ask ourselves, are they triggering us because we are seeing anger in them, and all we're really seeing is the anger in ourselves? Are we being triggered because we're seeing the greed in them and we're really seeing the greed in us? So I think you just have to ask yourself that question very honestly and openly. But very often, yes, that is the case. Other questions? So the question around how are you nicer to people who do not respect your boundaries and are aggressive to you? The very simple Buddhist teaching is to practice kindness always. Now, this in itself can trigger people, because we automatically will default to, well, what if they're doing this, or what if they're doing that? Should I still be nice? What if they're doing this to someone else? Should I still be nice? Being nice doesn't mean that we just become a doormat. There are kind, gentle, respectful ways to respond to people who act in very unkind ways, or very selfish ways. But again, these things take practice. If you create a perfect little bubble around you and surround yourself by 3 people who are always nice to you, then when you go outside that bubble and you engage in the world, you're going to have a lot of difficulty. So for me, what I've learned through Buddhist teachings is to practice kindness always, but that doesn't mean you must be silent. And there's a very fine line here. Again, I always defer to Thich Nhat Hanh and his great work around social justice, and with Martin Luther King, that he really coined this phrase, engaged Buddhism, that speak up and speak strongly on those on those things and those issues that you believe in. But if you bring more hatred and more anger to an already volatile situation, you're just adding more fuel to the fire. So when we see, as was brought up earlier, people responding with racist actions or racist views, the Buddhist approach is not to stay silent. For me, I speak up very vocally around these issues, and I don't feel that I'm going against anything I've learned through Buddhist teachings. The basic premise of Buddhist teachings is to liberate all beings from suffering. That's the Bodhisattva practice, is to help all beings suffer less. So when I see actions that are leading to suffering, it is my practice to engage with that. But can I do it skillfully? There's a word upaya, means skillful. Upaya, skillful means. So can I engage with skillful words, skillful actions? I think these things are very important. So hopefully that addresses the question. Other thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with? And I'll just add, for those who might be new to Buddhism, that there's often this, this view that if you don't know much about Buddhism and you've seen an image of some monk or nun sitting under a tree, that they've kind of just left everything and don't care. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Really, the beauty of Buddhist practice is that you're engaging in this practice to free yourself from greed, anger, and ignorance, so you can then interact with the world in a way that is free from greed, anger, and ignorance. So I find these teachings and this practice to be a beautiful way to bring kindness and compassion into the world, not to escape from the world. So question here, sort of a question, proposal. I've worked a lot with my own reactions and learned to relax, breathe through, particularly when I'm dealing with a so-called difficult customer. I'll pause because I'm guessing there's more to that. But I think that's good so far. What I've noticed when I re-engage and I'm clearly in my own real nature, is there begins to arise a thing for me that is often the perfect thing to say. Yeah, again, I think that's, if you had asked or brought that comment or question up earlier, I probably would have defaulted to my boiling water metaphor, which I always think is an easy way to see it. Another one is to think of a vase with water in it, and you have rocks and sand and pebbles, and you pick it up and you start shaking it, and all of a sudden everything just becomes one big mess. And very often that vase and the pebbles and the sands and the rocks shaking around is like our thoughts and our mind and our emotions. And now when you take the vase and you set it down and you stop shaking it and you allow it to settle, if you started with clear water, then there you have clear water again. All the dirt and rocks and pebbles settle to the ground, and there's the bottom of the vase, and there's the water. So this simple practice, as you say, to relax and breathe through it, that meditative practice allows everything to calm. And when we are all wrapped up emotionally with anger or frustration or whatever the challenges may be, it's going to be really difficult to say things that come from a place of kindness and compassion. So any time that we can settle our mind before responding, I think is very beneficial. So hopefully that's helpful. Other thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with? What we're really getting at is, and this is again beneficial for those who might be new, is to recognize that all these things we're looking at as far as the Buddhist teachings and meditation, they're not to become good Buddhists or better meditators. All of these things we're talking about are to help you engage in the world, as I've said 10 times already, probably this morning. And that's really the purpose, I find, of this practice, is to realize we're going to spend our entire lives interacting with humans and animals and all sentient beings. And we have choices each day to interact with kindness and compassion, or to interact with anger and ignorance. So are we going to bring less suffering into the world or more suffering into the world? So just things to explore. Other thoughts or questions? Do one more before we wrap up here. And also, I'll just remind you that these things are not easy. We've been triggered our entire lives, and our ego gets in the way. And I'm sure there's at least one person sitting there right now who's saying, yeah, but what if they do this? Or yeah, but what if they do that? And again, we always want to default back to, we have a right. Let me rephrase this. Very often, some people want to default back to saying something like, well, they did this, so it's okay for me to do that. And that's not at all what I get out of Buddhist teachings. What I get out of Buddhist teachings is to recognize they did what they did because of their suffering. And now I get to choose how I'm going to respond. But often I find people justifying their actions and using other people's actions, I should say, to justify our own actions that bring pain and suffering. All right, anything else before we wrap up? All right, then I'll go ahead and close on that. We will join palms. We'll do a transfer of merit. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most. All right. I just saw, Benton, your comment. I'll touch on this briefly. One way I try to dial down my reaction is to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Thoughts on that? 1000%. Yes. I think it helps to recognize that we don't know what anyone else is going through, and that kind of expression of to put yourself in someone else's shoes, at the very least, I think allows us to cultivate some compassion for the other person. Even if we don't know why they're doing what they're doing or how they could possibly do that, if we stop for a minute and we recognize that there's reasons they're doing it. And we kind of go through this "what if I was them" practice. I think it at least helps us have some sort of empathy for other people. So I think it's a good practice to put yourself in someone else's shoes and recognize that they too have experienced tremendous pain and suffering. So, all right, with that, just a couple quick announcements before you head off. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice, meditation to those who show up. We closed March 12th will be 1 year. So we're coming up on a year that we've been closed, which can't believe it's been that long, but here we are. So our entire schedule is all virtual, has been for the last probably 10 months. Every night, every morning, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. we sit, classes every night. We have a huge recovery sangha, so anyone battling addiction. We have a college group, a teenage group. Our San Diego State group, if you have any teenagers, if you know any teenagers, our San Diego State group, Delta Beta Tau, who leads our Dharma Bum Teen program, is kicking off. I believe it starts tomorrow. Just go to deltabetatau.org and you'll see the Dharma Bum Teens link. It's an 8-week program. They're using a program taught at Yale around health and well-being. It's a beautiful class. Free, of course, like everything else. So that'll start tomorrow. The book club, Marisa, I believe, is meeting today. Did I make that up? You can comment here and correct me if I'm wrong. So other than that, we will continue to stay closed until we feel it's safe to open. We obviously don't feel it's safe. So if you have questions, let us know. Buddha for You is also closed, but we have a new online store, so you can go to Buddha for You, and anything you need book-wise or anything else is on the website there. And yes, thanks, Marisa, for confirming today at 2:00. If you haven't joined the book club before, that's fine. You can jump in anytime. We're using a great book by Orjin Chong Rinpoche called Pristine Mind. The book also you can get on the Buddha for You website. But that makes every other week. So 2:00, the website, dharmabums.org, has the schedule, so you can check everything out there. So thanks all for being here. Please be safe, wear a mask, stay home. And let's do our best each day to make sure we don't bring anyone any pain. Thank you all.